Hello! This time we are going to show you how fast it is to build an Android app using xamoom. We use xamoom as our backend, and everything we did so far was setting up an empty Android application. Now we will add some libraries we will need for this. Of course, some of them are the basic libraries, like some support libraries, in this case App Combat in the current version, as well as the design library, the card view, which we'll use later on to display nice cards, and also the recycler view library. Xamoom offers SDKs for Android, so that we don't have to implement everything ourselves. They depend on a library called Glide, which we will also use here, and of course the xamoom Android library itself. There are two of them. One is the base SDK, and the other ones are the content blocks, which are used to display the different content blocks used in xamoom. We will start by creating a new activity, which will be the detail activity. We will later on use this activity to display a specific page. The layout of this activity consists of a relative layout and a frame layout. Let's clean this up a little bit. We will give this frame layout, of course, an ID. We will call it the detailed frame layout. I know that's a very creative name. And now we'll go on with adding some stuff to the Android manifest, like our Google Maps API key. And we will add an intent filter to our detail activity, because this activity will also be triggered if we scan one of our smart labels using NFC. So we will add an NFC action and have discovered to this activity. It has the category of default, and it will contain a URL, so we add that, and the URL will look something like xm.gl, because all xamoom URLs start with this. Now we will create a class globals. We will use that in various places throughout the app to, for example, to store settings and, for example, contents we have already scanned and stuff like that. Because we will use this class to save settings, we will add a static final string to the class with our preferences file name. Then we also need a key for the settings, which we will use to store our already scanned content items in. cost.com.at. And now we start with some Singleton stuff. So we will create a private instance of the class itself, and we will also add a member for the shared preferences object. And now we'll start to implement a Singleton pattern as you know it. So we implement a getInstance method, static of course. Check if our instance is null. If that's the case, initialize the object, and in every case, return this instance. The next thing we will do is we will add a method to set the application context. because of course to read settings we will need an application context in Android. Import it. And initialize the shared preferences using this preferences name. Now we will implement some methods for saving our preferences. Of course, to get a key and a value, because we will only store strings. Both are string. So we initialize a new shared preferences editor, which we will get from our shared preferences object. Put the preference entry by key and its value. And lastly, apply that. Next, we will implement the method to get something from the shared preferences. By its key. Of course, this will return the string, not void. So return the shared preferences, get string. So here we go, get string by key and an empty string as a default value. Now we'll implement a method which we will later on use in other activities to save a content that we have already scanned or discovered to the preferences. For this we will first look what's already in there. If the content we want to save is not already in saved content, we will add it, because we don't have to edit content twice. We will save this delimited by commas, and finally we will save the content string back to the settings. What we also need is a method to retrieve the contents we've already discovered and saved to our shared preferences. And so we're done for the moment with our globals object. What we now also need to do is add some styles. In our case, this will only be some colors. First, the primary color. So, I've written down here some color codes so that the app looks nice. Then we need the dark primary color. And of course, the accent color. No, I forgot to copy that. So let's copy all of this also to the v21 styles. You don't need to type that all again. And also, of course, change the theme to App Combat Light No Action Bar. And of course we do that in both styles files. Good. Now we will create a layout file which we will later use for our card view layout. There we will add some paddings. Padding start, padding end, so that our list views in the end will look good. Padding top and padding bottom also. And our cards will consist of, first of all, of course, we have to add a card view, which is Android support .7. Okay. Seems to be something wrong here. So we are obviously missing the right entry here. Good, so let's start with a layout width, which will be of course match parent, and the layout height and wrap content. And of course this gets an ID. A very creative one in this case, card view, and the layout gravity center. Now we add a corner radius to our card views. To get nice round corners, and inside of them we add another linear layout, which will be with match parent, height, wrap content. Our card views will consist of an image view, which we also will get an ID, so that we can later on assign an image to it, and a text view, and also this of course gets an ID, card title. Oh, I forgot something here obviously, but let's first add a text size. And now, of course, if we're assigning IDs, we have to do it that way. I'll set the orientation of the linear layout to vertical so that the image is on top and the text view is under it. Okay. This should be fine. Now let's start with some fragments. We create first our fragment which will show the news section, which will be all content items from xamoom having the tag news. This fragment will have a recycler view, which we'll use to scroll through the content items. We don't need that one. Actually, we don't need the whole method here. Okay, seems about right. Now let's edit the layout file, which will be a recycler view, course add an ID to it so that we can access it from within the activity. Good, so let's load our recycler view in onCreate view. We will just do this a little different because we need to save the recycler view into a private member and add a method to set up this recycler view as soon as the activity starts. This method gets the recycler view as well as a list of content items, which we will later on retrieve from xamoom. And now we add a method which we will use to download the news from xamoom. To do that, we will use the xamoom end user API, which is also Singleton, which gets a context as well as our API key, which we have saved to a resource file. And now we call get content list of the xamoom end user API. We set language to null because this will trigger the API to trigger the user language set on the phone, page size to 10, and we will tell the get content list that we want to have all content items with the tag news. And lastly, we will implement the callback, and if everything works fine, finished will be called, and there we call our method setup recycler view. With the items we just received, and if an error occurs, we will simply log it. Import log. Great. Next, we will implement an onStart method where we call download news. So every time the activity starts, it will refresh the news items from the xamoom backend. To make our recycler view work, we need, of course, a adapter for the items, which we will call now simple content adapter. I guess every one of you has implemented a lot of these adapters themselves, so this will be no big surprise. It extends recycler view adapter so view holder. Of course, view holder does not exist at the moment, but soon will, because we will implement it now. First add some members to the simple content adapter. We will split that up into values and now implement the view holder class. Which extends recycler view.viewHolder. The view holder gets also a member of the content it is bound to and its own view, as well as the image view of the content card and the text view, like we've defined it earlier on in the layout file for list item. Now we add a constructor to the view holder, which calls the constructor of our parent class, sets the view, and loads the image view, as well as, of course, the text view. So now we have to implement a few more methods, obviously, to the content adapter. First, we will implement a method to get a content item by position of the adapter. And of course our simple content adapter also needs a constructor, which will get context as well as the list of content items to display. We set the items to our member variable values, so that we can use them. Now we will implement some methods we need to make the whole thing work, like onCreateViewHolder, where we inflate our view, which in this case is of course our list item, and return a new view holder with this view. Now we also have to implement onBindViewHolder to make the adapter work with our view holder. This is where we set the bound content, which is the content item at exact this position, and also set the view. So we set the text of the text view to this content item's text, or title in this case, and add an onClick listener to it. First we need to get a context again. On click we'll open the detail activity to show the full content item, so we create a new intent. With the detail activity class. We've forgotten something here in the detail activity class, so we will add a member to it, which will be the key of the extra content we will add to the intent if we want to give the activity on its start a content item. So now we can use it and say intent put extra, use this key, and give the content that is bound to this one we just clicked, give the content ID to the new intent, so the detail activity knows which content item it should show. And now we start a new activity using this intent. So if we would click now on this list view, the detail activity will be triggered, opened, and will show us the full content of exact that item we clicked on. If our content item has a image public URL, so there's a cover image attached to this content item, we will use Glide, a library to load images nicely, and let it load our image to the card view. Add some options and also tell Glide into which view, which of course is the image view. The image should be loaded. Good, now we need also to implement get item count, of course, so that our adapter works. And from here on we add another fragment, this time the map fragment. This will be used to show a spot map with spots containing a special tag. On our backend system we assigned a tag called sightseeing to all of these spots that we want to show here. So we first implement a private member, a list of spots, and also a Google map. And now we will add another method to this, which we'll call setUpMap. We will use that to, as the name already says, to set up the map as soon as the fragment starts. Here we will initialize a support map fragment. Get the child fragment manager, begin transaction. First we have to change a few things here in the layout file of this fragment. We have to give the frame layout an ID so that we know with which fragment we are communicating. We replace this fragment by the new map fragment and commit this action. So now we check if we have the right objects imported. Like here we don't. We don't want this one, we want the support fragment, of course. We also check if this is true in the news fragment, and of course it's not. So remove this import and import the support fragment also here. Good, now let's use our map fragment to get the map asynchronously and extend our class, or let's tell the class to implement onMapReady callback. Now of course we're missing some methods, so we implement it. It's on onMapReady. On MapReady we set the map, it's not called map, it's called Google Map of course, to our member variable of the Google Map so that we can use it everywhere inside of this object. And we implement a method called download markers, where we again call the xamoom API. Again, this needs some context and the xamoom API key. If you don't have an API key on your system, contact us and we will supply you with one. And this time we call getSpotMap, which gets a system ID. We don't need that because it's determined by the API key already. We need to tell the API which spots we want to have based on tags, so we type here sightseeing. And we don't have to specify a language, so the system language will be used. And of course implement the callback. We get spot map response, which has items, which are actually the spots, which we set to our spot list member. Of course we call download markers as soon as the map is ready. Now we're missing a method which is called show markers. This one gets the map on which we want to show the markers on, and for each spot in our newly loaded spot list we create a new marker, give it some options, in our case just position, which is a lat long object, and of course each and every spot has a location, which is the latitude and the longitude. And now we set also the title of this marker, so if we click the marker on the map it will get a little bubble showing us the display name in the user's system language of the spot. And we call show markers as soon as the API callback is finished. So that's it for our map. Now we add another fragment, which will be the saved fragment. On this fragment we will show all the content we have already discovered using NFC, so where we scanned a marker on a smart label, so that we can use them or read the content later on. So on the first start this activity will be empty, but as soon as we discover more and more content, there will be more and more saved content inside of this list. The layout of this fragment is again a recycler view. So this is pretty similar to the news fragment. We will create a recycler view member, as well as a list of content, which are the contents we've already scanned, so the saved content. To import this. Okay. Now we'll again change this method so that we save our recycler view to our member and not only return it in onCreateView. And like in the news fragment, we will add a onStart method, which we will then use to load the saved content as soon as the fragment starts, and a method to set up the recycler view, where we set our layout manager for this recycler view, which is a linear layout manager. And the good thing is we have already implemented an adapter with a card view for this, so we can copy this adapter from the news fragment. Of course, we could have used a different file to put it in just once, but for now we just copy it. Maybe we want to make the adapter behave a little different on the content view than on the news view someday, and set this adapter to our recycler view. Because we already have the news fragment open, we can now of course also add this adapter to the recycler view in the news fragment. Oh, that's the adapter. Yeah, okay, start with the layout manager. So set layout manager, of course, not set adapter. And now we set the adapter to a simple content adapter. Using the content items. Good, now let's go on in the saved fragment again. We need, of course, to download our saved content from the xamoom backend. To find out which contents we have already scanned, we use our globals object to get the saved content from the preference object. So we get the saved contents as a string delimited by commas. So we have to split this string up first. So split it. And we have a list of content IDs now. And if there are any new ones, because if we load this for the second time, maybe we have loaded this already. So just do this if there are new ones, if the size has changed. Otherwise we simply end the function here. But if there are new ones, we go through all the content IDs, use the xamoom end user API, again with the context and of course an API key, to get content by ID full. This needs of course a content ID. If we want to have the style, we don't need that. We also don't need menu, and we also do not supply a language because we will use the system language. And now we implement the callback. If it's finished, it will return us a content by ID response where we can get the content item from, and tell the recycler view that the data has changed because we added the content item to the content list of this fragment. We call download save content on start, and so we're done also with the saved fragment. Now we take care of the main activity of this application, which will be a coordinator layout. We don't need all the paddings here because there will be a recycler view in here. Actually, there will be the other fragments in here which will have a recycler view or a map view or something in them. Of course, we will get this we will give this coordinator layout an ID. Add a tab layout because we want to have 3 tabs, one with the news, one with the map, and one with the saved content. So we start with an app bar layout, which we also will give an ID, a width, and a height. Inside this app bar layout, we will now really implement our toolbar, also with an ID. Creative as we are, we call it toolbar, with a width, match parent, and a height of this action bar default height. Okay, there's obviously no suggestion for that. Yeah, no problem. And we will also set the layout scroll flags to scroll and enter always. This behavior can change by you however you wish. We don't need the end tag, we will end it directly because there won't be any other components inside of it. Good, and now we will add our, no, not that one, that one. Yeah, that one. We will add our tab bar layout, which will hold our 3 tabs, the news, the map, and the saved content. And also this tab bar layout does not need an end tag. You just can end it directly. Now we also need a view pager for our tabs. Give it the ID view pager. And it will be, we get a layout width, match parent, and also layout height of match parent. And it will also get a layout behavior. App scrolling view behavior. This doesn't seem to be right here. Better. Now we go back to the code of our main activity, let it extend app combat activity, and set up our toolbar. Of course, we have to import it. Load the toolbar from the layout file, and set our action bar, or tell our action bar that it's now this toolbar. Now set up the view pager. Check if it was loaded correctly. Load our tab layout. Let's call set up view page. Of course, we haven't implemented this method right now, but we will do very soon. But first load tab layout. And set it up with our view pager. Initialize our globals object by setting the application context. Now let's implement this method and implement another simple adapter for the view pager, which extends from Fragment pager adapter. This adapter gets a private member list of all the fragments it contains. This will be our three fragments: the news fragment, the map fragment, and the saved content fragment. And it will also get a list of the fragment titles, so that we can show nice titles for our fragments. Now implement a constructor for our adapter, where we call the adapter of the parent class, where we call, of course, the constructor of the parent class. Oh, something seems not right here. Better. You see, you often have to check if your imports are really correct. Now implement a method to add a fragment to our adapter, which gets the fragment itself, and of course its title. Add the fragment and the title to our lists. And now override get item and return, oh, not fragment titles, fragments. So on the position we want to get, and also implement get count, which is simply the size of the fragment list. And still there's one method missing, which we will use to get the page titles, where we return the page title on a specific position. Now we can really set up our view pager, where we initialize our adapter for the fragments with the support fragment manager. Add all our fragments. Yeah. So we create a new news fragment, add the fragment and of course the title. That we do the same for the map fragment. Of course you should put these strings to a resource file so you can localize them, but now just to show how it works we will just save it here. And lastly we also add the saved fragment, where we will call it visited, because that are the spots somebody really visited and discovered the content there and then is able to read it later on. We have to of course change the fragment again. Yeah. Okay. Lastly, we will set the adapter of our view pager to our newly created adapter. And we forgot something here in the map framework and in the map fragment. Of course we have to call setup map first when it's created, otherwise we won't see a map. And our detail activity has also to implement the on xamoom content fragment interaction listener. Because this one will be called by scanning an Nfc tag, for example. So on every start of the detail activity, we will check if we have gotten a content ID. If we have gotten one, then this activity was opened by one of the fragments, for example by the news fragment or by the saved fragment, to show the details about the special items, about the special content item. So if this content ID is not as null, we get a xamoom content fragment without the link color, but with an API key, of course. So let's put that fragment into a variable. And now set the content of this fragment by content ID. And that's basically it. Now this xamoom content fragment will load the content and also display it. So you don't have to implement all the different content block types and stuff like that. This will be done by you. So everything we have to do now is to replace the detail fragment in this activity by the xamoom content fragment, and the content is shown. If we did not get a content ID, this activity was called by scanning an Nfc tag. So we will implement the method to handle the Nfc scan and show the content that is bound to the spot we just scanned using NFC. For this we will read the URL from the Nfc scan. Because on the NFC text there are URLs looking like xm.gl/ and after the slash there's the content, the location ID, the location identifier of the spot. So we will pass this URL to get only the location identifier from it. So we get the last path segment, which should now only be the identifier of the spot we just scanned. And now we call the xamoom end user API. Again, we need some context and we need the API key. And we call get content by location identifier, because that's what we right now got from the NFC tag. Location identifier, again, no language, but of course a callback, and when it's finished we do the same as we did with when we get the content ID from another activity or fragment. But first we save this content which we just retrieved to saved content so that it is shown in the list of saved content. And now we get again xamoom content fragment, like we did when we get a content ID directly. There's no special link color, but of course an API key. Set the content to the fragment, because now we have already the whole content. We don't set the content ID here, we have already the whole thing, so we don't need to load it again. And replace the fragment, the detail fragment again with the xamoom content fragment. And there we go. The new content gets shown as soon as we scan an NFC tag. Now there's this special case if you click on a content block of the type content. This is something like a link inside of the xamoom system to another xamoom content. We have to implement what should happen then, and there of course exactly the same happens. The content fragment loads the new content which is bound to this link and replaces the fragment again, and that's it to the back stack so that the back button works. We made some little mistakes, like we forgot that this has to be uppercase, and here we go. Now we have a fully working Android app written with xamoom, with the xamoom SDK, connected to a real xamoom system. And now we have found another little thing we have to do. We forgot to set up the recycler view inside of the saved fragment. So now also the saved contents are shown. And you see it's possible to build an app with a fully CMS in the background, including location features and NFC scanning on Android in less than 1 hour.